Back again for another Bombs Away podcast. My name is CJ Baumgartner, and yeah, it's Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. I'm your host, CJ Baumgartner, as we've now already said twice. Twins spring training games are happening. We're not even into March yet, but the Twins have been playing already 3 organized baseball games. I got to tell you, after a week where it snowed a whole bunch, it was really cold. That's a nice little sign to see, a nice little nugget. I even got the Twins jersey on for those of you watching on the YouTube page for Bombs Away. Go check that out. You can also find Bombs Away on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also give us a follow on Twitter and Facebook as well. Twins, spring training games, it's all happening. Kronk voice, it's all coming together. So this season has been, the spring training, I should say. The season hasn't quite started yet, but things are making their way through. They've had the opening workouts. They've had the media days. They've had the everything. And now it's just to the point of getting things ramped up. And I don't know what day quite off the top of my head that the Twins are, or some of these Twins players are going to be leaving for the World of Baseball Classic, although I know that that's coming up in the somewhat near future because the whole thing pretty much takes place over the course of March, but I digress. Twins are playing some spring training baseball, and Twins have arrived at spring training. The players, the pitchers, the hitters, the catchers, everybody's all there. So now let's take a look at what the heck is going on in Twins camp. First off, there's a new guy. The Twins made a signing just a couple days after we did our last podcast. Donovan Solano has entered the Twins mix, spent a little bit of time with the Dodgers, spent a little bit of time with the Giants, has spent some time with the Reds, and now going to come to the Twins on a 1-year, $2 million contract. Could be up to 2.25 with incentives if he hits all of those. Who is Donovan Solano? Well, he's like a Luis Arraez, Kyle Farmer type. He's short in stature like Luis Arraez. He's a slash hitter like Luis Arraez, although not quite onto the same level of Luis Arraez. But in terms of, he's also got a Kyle Farmer in terms of his glove. He can play in a bunch of different positions on the field, although first base likely where Derek Falvey mentioned that Solano will be seeing some time. So the biggest question is, why would the Twins go do this? It's not shocking, I think, in itself that the Twins brought in Donovan Solano, another utility guy, high contact guy, someone like that into the fold. What is surprising is that he came in on a major league contract, which means if the Twins try to stick him into the minors, he goes on waivers and another team can claim him. So that begs the question, why would you sign him to a major league contract? Why wouldn't you try and sign him to, say, a minor league contract and see if he can prove his way up? And you can always stash him in St. Paul. If he makes the team, he makes the team, but whatever. Well, the Twins wanted him on a major league contract, which means he's going to be on the 26-man roster unless he just can't hit a baseball or unless he gets hurt. So he's going to be on the major league roster. Now, there's 2 different ways of looking at this, and I'm not quite sure which way I'm leaning towards. Option 1 on how to feel about this is it's harmless, adding Solano. He's added right-handed depth for the lineup. He's got a bunch of different positions he can play in the infield, makes him a Swiss Army knife, and that's something that the Twins this offseason, when you look at adding Farmer, when you look at adding Taylor, and some of these other additions the Twins have had, positional flexibility has been a really key thing for them. So it just gives them more depth, gives them another contact hitter. Losing Arraez, you're going to need a few more of those slashers in your lineup. You can't all just rely on power guys. So I think in that aspect, I think he makes sense for the Twins. He also offers injury insurance in case Kirilloff can't quite go. So then you can stick Solano at first base, and then you can put Joey Gallo in the outfield where you can theoretically get more value out of him because Gallo's a better defender as a corner outfielder, or at least you can get more value out of that than you can if you just stick him at first base. He's also a good clubhouse guy and a slasher, 339 on base percentage last year. Makes room on the Twins made room on the 40-man, by the way, by sending Chris Paddock to the 60-day injured list, and the Twins just made a move today to get, I want to call him Danny Santana, but that's not quite his name. They do sign a Santana to the team, and he's a reliever they claimed him off waivers from Atlanta. He's going to be on the 40-man roster right now, and they moved Royce Lewis to the 60-day IL to make room for him because, again, Paddock probably not going to pitch at all this season, and Lewis isn't coming back until after the All-Star break at the earliest, so it makes sense why the Twins would open up those two spots and do it that way instead of waiving somebody. Now, here's the camp where it doesn't make sense. So initially you have Donovan Solano's here. He provides some extra on-base help. He provides some extra help with the glove. It's harmless, a very good clubhouse guy, all that kind of stuff. He's 35 years old. I mean, he's a journeyman. He knows how to play the game, knows how to approach it the right way. You can see why the Twins would bring him in, as well as added injury insurance. But what doesn't quite add up, though, about this signing is the fact that it means that Kirilloff or Larnach, now, again, this is all barring injury. Somebody could get hurt 3 weeks from now, and all of a sudden, Jose Miranda could pull a hammy playing in the World Baseball Classic, and all of a sudden now the Twins need a third baseman, and then there you go. You could put Solano at third base, and now Kirilloff goes to first, or somewhere along those, or you stick Kyle Farmer at third base, and then it opens up. My point is, it pretty much means that as things stand, either Alex Kirilloff or Trevor Larnach likely will not start the season with the big league club. Solano has a major league deal, so the Twins you sign the major league deal over the minor league deal if you're Solano, because the Twins are basically guaranteeing you're going to make the big league club out of spring training. It's like an NFL. It's like an NFL deal. You're not just a player invite to camp. You're not an undrafted free agent. You're a second round pick, which means that the team has the team is giving you that assurance that they have more invested in you. Your contract's just a little, the wording in the contract and the things that they have set up for you basically are under the table guarantee that you're going to make the big league roster. Solano has a major league deal. Larnach and Kirilloff both have minor league options, while Nick Gordon has none. So that pretty much gives Nick Gordon protection as well, because the Twins would ultimately lose him on waivers. And again, Nick Gordon, another one of those guys who has that multi-positional flexibility depth, something that the Twins really, really are starting to turn to. Now, I don't know if it's quite a reaction to last season with all the injuries. I don't know if it's a reaction to the fact that the ball isn't as juiced as it was 4 years ago, and now they're finally coming to the reality that, hey, we can't just try and hit the ball out of the yard every single time. We need to get a little bit more of these slashers, some of these more versatile guys. I don't know. I don't quite know. But my point is that is it better for Kirilloff or Larnach to be getting consistent at-bats in AAA? But they've already proven that when they're healthy, they're too good for AAA? Or is it better to get them up in the big leagues? And yeah, maybe the Twins kind of put him on a rotating basis, or give Kirilloff maybe a few rest days, or ease him into it, or ease Larnach into it. But at least they're with the big league club and they're providing you value up here, because they've already proven that when they're right, that they really can't. There's nothing for them to prove. They're quadruple A players at this point. But the big key for the Twins is, well, they haven't been healthy. And why would we want them to do that? Why don't we have them go down to AAA, get more consistent at-bats? When you look at somebody like Larnach, they had the 2019 and the they had just had 2019, if you're Trevor Larnach, before COVID hit. And then you try to come up with a big league club, because remember, there was no minor league season in 2020. You come up with a big league club in 2021 and then get hurt and spend most of your season on the IL. And then the same story last year, where you're spending a lot of time not getting those minor league reps. You're actually nursing injury. So when you look at Trevor Larnach, he hasn't had a ton of high minors experience in the last couple of years. And so you think maybe he does need a little bit more seasoning, although Trevor Larnach has spent a bunch of time playing college ball, college World Series champion with Oregon State, all that kind of stuff. He just needs to prove he can hit big league pitching. And I think he has, in the small sample sizes that he's been healthy. And that's a big if for a lot of these Twins prospects, is when they're healthy, you can see them produce. But the problem is you need to see them produce more. And if you're the Twins, after last season especially, they're not putting their faith in a ton of guys who have injury concerns. I mean, outside of Byron Buxton, who just kind of is who he is at this point. But even then, you have Michael A. Taylor behind him in center field. And that's something that I've advocated for on this podcast, as a Buxton light to put behind him. Somebody who isn't Byron Buxton, obviously, because you'll never find that as a backup, but somebody who is close enough, like a carbon copy, Buxton light, if you will. And that was Michael A. Taylor. So the Twins, my point are putting more faith in guys who can be on the field and who can show up more in some of these ball games. And that kind of stinks for Larnach and Kirilloff, because I really think that they're wasting their time in AAA. And again, I've been going back and forth on, look, it is right to have Larnach and Kirilloff earn their way back into the lineup. It is important that they prove they can be healthy first and mash the ball in AAA and basically force Derek Falvey and Thad Levine's hand. Like, look, if it's April 30th and they have to send Donovan Solano down to AAA because Alex Kirilloff has hit 8 home runs in the month of April, I think the Twins will take that. I think they'll be like, okay, fine, move him up here. Let's get him up. Fine, we'll figure it out. Or the vice versa with Trevor Larnach or whoever ends up getting sent down. Or what also is likely going to happen is they're down in AAA for 2 weeks and somebody goes on the injured list, and then bada bing, bada boom, they're up in the majors anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So that's the whole point. Is it's a major league season. A lot of things really kind of work themselves out. We all like the pitching depth. How are Louis Varland and Bailey Ober and Simeon Woods Richardson and some of these other guys going to get big league innings from the rotation when you have all 5 of, Maeda, Lopez, Ryan, Sonny Gray, and the like out there for the Twins? And the answer is it's a long season. People are going to get hurt. Somebody's going to need to make a spot start. Somebody's just not going to play very well. So all these things kind of have a way of working themselves out. But at the same time, and with the same token, whatever truism you want to put in there, they still are your nucleus of talent, aren't they? Like, this is the Twins' current core. It's not the Keplers and the Polancos and the Buxtons anymore, and the Sanos. It's the Kirilloffs and the Larnachs and the Mirandas. That is your new young core that you're trying to push through with. And I know you want them to prove it, but at the same time, there has to be kind of a sink or swim. This is it, guys. We're giving you this opportunity, and it's just not quite happening. And honestly, I kind of wish that the Twins would just roll with some of those guys. But that being said, it might be getting a little nitpicky because we're not even to March yet. So somebody could get hurt. Somebody could play very well. Somebody could play very poor. And all this stuff gets figured out by middle of June anyways. And it's all fine. Max Kepler could tear a bicep and be out for the rest of the season. And all of a sudden, boom, there you go. Gallows in right field, Larnach's in left. And now we have everything figured out. Or whatever. It's gonna work itself out no matter what, because you can talk yourself into that with Royce Lewis when he comes back, or Chris Paddock when he comes back eventually. There's going to be a place for all these guys, and the Twins' whole point is make the depth so deep that these guys have to earn their way, and that even if we go through a couple injuries, we still have bodies in place that we trust to at least get us over the hump, so we're not having to bring up some of these other guys. And by the way, not even mentioning where Matt Wallner fits in. He's so far down the totem pole. There's so many of these other Twins guys like Ed Julian, or a bunch who we'll get to in a second when we get down to some of these other things. But with the Twins and with adding Solano, I think freaking out about signing him is a little overplayed, or praising the Twins to the moon that you brought in Donovan Solano, because he's a guy who really has just kind of had a late career resurgence, has had a few nice seasons. 2019, 2020, 2021 were really, really good seasons, and then was hurt for about half the year with the Reds last year. So, I mean, look, it's a guy who at best is just going to be an average player. I think that's where he is. He's a league average player. But at the same time, if you can just get league average play, it's a lot better than what the Twins were getting at the end of last season, which was AA league average player. So, look, it's going to figure itself out. We are going to figure itself out. The one thing about Solano that's interesting is he's only played 100 games or more once since 2019. So it's with Solano, he's not a perfect player. Now, 2020 is a little bit of a wash, and that's when he had his best season. I believe it was 2020 or 2021, but 2020 was obviously the COVID year, so that plays into it as well. The point with the Solano signing is nice. It's a body. It brings in. It could push Larnach or Kirilloff down a spot, but I think the Twins have said we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Because according to reports, according to The Athletic, the Twins have been interested in Solano basically since January, since December. In that range, they've constantly been checking in, and then we're finally able to get a deal in. So the Twins have been interested in Solano for quite some time, and now we're finally able to get him in the building. Another interesting thing of note is that the Twins were interested in Luke Voit, who's a first baseman, DH type, right-handed hitter, somebody I believe we talked about over the winter with the podcast over some guys the Twins could bring in to fill that DH role. And Luke Voit is a DH first base. Big arms. I mean, the guy's jacked. He just looks like somebody who's going to either hit the ball out of the yard or head back to the dugout because he just struck out. The Twins did offer him a deal, and he decided to go to the Brewers on a minor league contract. Now, their minor league contract is basically a major league contract, and I think I don't even know who the first baseman DH is for Milwaukee right now, but I think that's basically it's a minor league deal, but don't worry, man, you're going to be with the big league club and playing a lot of games for Milwaukee no matter what. So he chose to go there. And maybe it's just because he sees more of an opportunity to play where he sees the Twins' first base situation of, well, there's Gallo that could play there. There's Kirilloff that can play there. Miranda can play there. And Royce Lewis is coming back. Like, there's just a lot of bodies in the way. And Luke Voit would seem like the first to get rid of unless he was just having an absolutely stellar season. So I could see why the Twins checked in on Luke Voit. And especially now where the Twins are set up the way they're at, why Luke Voit would say, I'm going to pass and take a situation where I think I'm going to play more. Because at this situation, and especially guys who sign minor league free agent deals, they sign some of these contracts as a minor league free agent because they know that they're going to have a chance to get to the big league club. It's why I think Willie Castro, who the Twins signed as a camp invite from the Detroit Tigers, he had some infield experience, and that was before Carlos Correa came back into the fold. So he thought, hey, there's a good chance to kind of work my way, maybe see some time at shortstop, get some infield reps throughout the season, and then all of a sudden Correa comes back, and now you have Farmer behind him, and now the Twins bring in Solano, and basically not looking too good for Willie Castro. He's going to be spending a lot of time down at CHS Field in St. Paul if he's still with the Twins. So that's kind of how the gist of all this works. So that's been a lot of stuff talking about Solano, but let's go more now into the Twins' early spring training news and notes. Let's just barrel through some of these here. First off on my list is Jordan Balazovic is a dummy. A big old dummy, and it may have cost him a shot with the Twins, because remember last year he was a top prospect, not only in the Twins system, the Twins' top pitching prospect, also a top 100 prospect in all of baseball. It seemed like a surefire thing that even though he started the year in St. Paul, he was going to make the big league club at some point throughout the season. The Twins probably were sure of it in the front office and the coaching staff and the fan base. Everybody was ready for it. And then he had an ERA of over 7.5 last year, battled some knee injuries to start the year and never quite was good and was downright putrid at times. And now there's a laundry list of guys who have taken steps up. There's Louis Varland, there's Simeon Woods Richardson, Bailey Ober getting healthy. I mean, now all of a sudden, Balazovic is down on the totem pole in a very deep Twins rotation as currently constructed. So he's really a guy that needed to come in and have himself a good spring and really get his game back on track. And he didn't even get the opportunity to do that because last Saturday he got punched in the jaw and it didn't quite work out for him. So he got punched in the jaw, and now he got punched in the face, broke his jaw, out 7 to 10 days before he can even do anything again because that thing is wired shut. And the Twins pretty much threw him under the bus, or at least called him out as much as you can, with the point of Rocco being very upset and then Falvey saying, like, we just got to make sure we're focusing on baseball, which is not a great look for Balazovic. So it's going to be tough sledding for him. And honestly, he could still turn it around if he comes back and this motivates him. And it's kind of the whole Torrey Hunter taking a swing at Justin Morneau kind of thing. Like, hey, man, you got some talent. You need to figure this out, and have something like that kind of get them in check to recalibrate their careers. That's the happy version of it. The sad version of it is Balazovic might just be a failed prospect, and the Twins have so many bodies in front of him that they're not going to hand him anything, and he'll just never quite get over the hump and get to the big leagues and become a contributing major league pitcher. But we'll see. Time will tell. Second, Miranda in the best shape of his life season. And that's been happening. Of course, Carlos Correa saying, have you seen that body? Sexy. Of course, the big line out of Twins Fest. Miranda showing up in the best shape of his life, losing a bunch of weight, getting strong, training with Carlos Correa. There's always the camp lines, Sano shows up in the best shape of his life. Byron's feeling good. No injuries are going to stop him this year. There's always a few of those. this so-and-so picked up a new pitch and everything. And this guy's got a couple more miles an hour on his fastball than he did last year. There's always the new trainer. There's always things that are very team spinny, and nothing quite has happened yet. So you're just kind of going off of, oh, this guy looks a little bit different than last year. So let's see how this can do before we actually see them play organized baseball games, and a lot of them. Miranda's one of them where I do believe that, look, maybe the injuries hurt. Maybe the injuries mount up more because he shed weight and now he can't quite be as protected. That maybe, but also at the same time, I think it's just important for Miranda to be training with Carlos Correa. I think that helps out a lot more. I think a full season of Carlos Correa taking Miranda under his wing will be huge as well. I think Jose Miranda going to play with Puerto Rico in the World Baseball Classic is going to be big for him, so we can kind of see this environment and play with some of these really, really great baseball players from PR and get to play in this tournament. And I think it'll be better for him than playing in spring training games. That's for sure. A lot more live competitive at bats, which is exactly what he needs. And I think Jose Miranda will be fine. That one I'm buying into. There's some camp stories I'm not quite buying into yet, and we'll get into one of that in a second. And that is Molitor is here. Paul Molitor, remember him? Manager of the year in 2017, canned the season later in 2018. Replaced by Rocco Baldelli, fired by Falvey and Levine, the guys who are running the show. Now, yeah, he's back. He's back in Twins camp as a base running consultant, and I think we'll get a very prominent title, I think is what's going to happen within not the actual in the dugout coaching staff, but as a special assistant. He's there teaching guys how to run the bases. Paul Molitor, of course, 3,000 hits and hundreds and upon hundreds of stolen bases throughout his career, one of the best base runners of all time. And now he's here instructing the Twins on how to be better base runners. Because let's be honest, and I've said this a few times just kind of in jest, but I'm glad we're finally able to admit it, that Rocco Baldelli's baseball teams have been one of the worst base running teams in the league since 2019. They've just constantly made mistake after mistake, and it's cost them runs, and it's just made them look like not a very sound baseball team. So it's one of the things in little league and high school baseball. There's always, you watch a team take infield and you see how well they play, and if they're crisp and they're moving and whatever, it doesn't intimidate you. You're not quite scared of them, but it does make you go, oh, these guys came to play today. And when you see guys just throwing the ball around the yard and messing up and everybody's just kind of doing whatever, then you're like, oh, well, these guys might have some talent, but I think we got a shot because they're not quite playing as hard. I don't know. You get my point with the fact of the Twins are a bad base running team, and it just doesn't give them a good look around the league that, hey, we got to really bring up on our A game with these guys. And it just doesn't, you don't take them very seriously if you can't run the bases well. And it's not just in terms of stealing bases, although that is something that Rocco has said that the Twins are going to do more of, which is the one thing that I'll say. It's a camp story. I'll believe it when I see it, because the Twins are the Twins going to run Byron Buxton more? It felt like they didn't last year because they didn't want him sliding into the bag and breaking his finger or rolling his ankle. So will the Twins steal more bases? That's yet to be seen, and I'll believe that when I see it. But I do think Molitor can help the Twins run the bases, and it's taking better angles. It's tagging up on fly balls. It's just being a more sound base runner, and they just didn't have a lot of that. Now, the Twins have Michael A. Taylor. They have Carlos Correa back. Max Kepler's always been a good base runner. So is Joey Gallo. There's some things in there. There's no more Gary Sanchez. There's no more Miguel Sano. You wring yourselves free of a few of these guys who are slow, who maybe don't make the best base running decisions, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility. But it's about how you round a base. It's reading and reacting to where the ball's going. And can I get this extra base? Can I be advantageous? Opportunistic is always the word. You hear it with basketball teams. Can you be opportunistic when you try and go get a turnover or making a shot? The football teams, can you be opportunistic in terms of trying to get that extra yard, trying to get those extra few yards, trying to get the fumble, whatever it is? And for the Twins, it's, can you be opportunistic when you see the ball? Do you think that there's a guy, an outfielder who's maybe napping and you can take an extra base, or can you bluff a tag and get him to throw the ball into the bleachers? Is there one of those areas that you can really improve your team? And I think that's where the Twins can improve. And I think Molitor being there helps them improve on that, being more opportunistic, taking better angles, being more alive on the base paths. I think Molitor working on one of the backfields with the Twins at base running is huge. And that's props to Molitor for wanting to come back and do this, because it's the same people in charge that fired him 1 year after winning manager of the year, a guy who's respected around baseball. And I know there's some Twins fans who want to keep him, some Twins fans who wanted him gone. I always thought in my time, there was never anything against Molitor as a manager. I thought Molitor, even if Molitor was still around today, I wouldn't be upset about it. That being said, that's nothing against Rocco, but it's just more of, this was a guy who, for every intention, could have told the Twins to shove it and not came back. But he's a St. Paul guy, Cretin-Durham Hall, Hall of Famer, a lot of time with the Brewers and the Blue Jays, but still at some time in a Twins uniform. And he came back because that's who the Twins are. So props to him for wanting to come back and do this. Props to the Twins for asking him to come back and having a good enough relationship with him post-firing and handling his firing well enough to a point where he can come back 4 years later and want to do this. That's not something that happens in a lot of organizations around baseball. But I mean, Twins fans know that's exactly what the Twins do. This is who the Twins have always been. I'm surprised Gardy's not running around there somewhere doing something. So props to the Twins, props to Molitor for coming back, and props to Baldelli for wanting to do this and realizing that, hey, we've had a problem in base running, and I want my predecessor, the guy who they fired, to come in and do something that I have not been able to do. So that's my quick spiel on that. But again, I'm not exactly going to trust that the Twins are all of a sudden going to swipe a bunch of bases next year or be great base runners from day one immediately. Now, props to them for addressing it and trying to do better, but we're just going to have to believe that when we see it, in terms of the Twins actually being a good base running team. So we'll see, I think, is the ultimate one on that one. But I got to say, it's not quite the camp story that I'm rallying behind. But in terms of stolen bases, it's not like the Twins go from worst to first, because the Twins, I think, stole one of the least amount of bases in baseball last year. They're going to maybe go from like worst to bottom third, top of the bottom third. So you go from like 30th in the league or 29th, and can you go up to like 22nd? Can you steal like 5 more bases this year? Can you do that? Now, it's really hard to quantify how good a good base running team is outside of stolen bases. And just in terms of general base running, because there's not quite some of these stats that can pick up on it, but the added runs you can create and havoc on the base paths you can create by doing that will definitely improve this Twins team for next year. So another Twins camp news and note here, Joey Gallo bounce back season is on. Speaking of player features and guys who are in the best shape of their life and ready with this new team to have a career year, it's Joey Gallo. Ken Rosenthal was in Twins camp, talked to Gallo, reports that he's revamped his swing, said that the last couple of years in New York and even in Texas is just a little bit slow generating that power and trying to read the pitch. So it's trying to make his swing a little bit quicker, seeing if they can avoid some of that swinging and missing action. Again, another one of those, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not the biggest Joey Gallo guy around. I don't think the signing was horrible, especially now that Correa's here. So it's just kind of like hey, this guy's a bounce back season. This will be pretty good. Get him in a low environment like Minnesota compared to the Yankees, which really did get to Gallo. I think we all kind of knew that, but then reading it again in that Rosenthal piece, it really did get to him, just how negatively he was in New York and how bad he played, and the Yankees fans' attitude towards him kind of mounted on top of it. So getting him into Minnesota will be a little bit better in terms of his confidence. But that being said, he can have all the confidence in the world, but if he can't hit the baseball, we're in trouble. And he's had a really hard time hitting the baseball. Now, look, he's a 40 homer guy at his peak, but that was in the middle of the juice ball era. Can he hit 30 home runs for this team? Can he hit 25 to 30 home runs? We already know the batting average. He's a career like 198 hitter in terms of batting average, but can he provide some of the doubles and home runs and be that middle of the lineup thumper that the Twins need? I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not the biggest Joey Gallo guy compared to some people in the fan base, but I don't hate the signing. I think it's the biggest thing to go off of there. If he struggles, like if you get to halfway through the year and it just isn't working, I can see the Twins. It's tough because they signed him to an 11 million 1 year contract. There's the words to this deal. And do they cut him midway through the year? I keep going back and forth of, yeah, I mean, if they need to cut bait and he's being bad, of course you got to cut him. But when you invest double-digit millions in him and then you got to go to the poll ads and say, hey, man, we want to cut this guy to not play baseball for us, it doesn't quite, I don't know if that's quite going to be approved, but we'll have to see. Another news and note, I completely forgot about Randy Dobnak. He hasn't pitched in basically 2 years, so I guess I can understand why he's had the finger issues. But when we did our starters and relievers, I really don't think I mentioned Dobnak that much. And now he's been pitching a little bit. He's not on the 40-man roster, so he's got an uphill battle if he wants to get back onto this Twins team. But I think the best way he finds a consistent role is going to be in the bullpen, because the Twins have so many starters right now that the only way Randy Dobnak gets up there is because he has big league experience. But at the same time, Randy Dobnak is not on the 40-man roster. So you're going to have to take somebody off of the 40-man roster to get him up to the big leagues. And is it easier for the Twins to justify getting him on the 40-man roster and getting back up here to be a spot starter, to be a guy who will make 2 or 3 starts while a guy's on the injured list? Or is the value going to be in a relief role? And I think Randy Dobnak could be good in that relief role. He's average as a starter, but I think he could really do well in that relief role. Randy Dobnak, great story in 2020, had a really nice season before kind of falling off the cliff towards the end. But I think Dobnak is a guy who, like the Griffin Jax arc, somebody who maybe as that reliever can add a couple more miles an hour to his fastball. Currently sits at about 94 with his average fastball velocity. So if you can get that up a couple more miles an hour by moving him to the bullpen and just having him throw hard for 15 to 20 pitches instead of 70 to 100, that definitely could change things. And also, and this maybe is a caution against him being a reliever, is the home run per 9 was an issue in 2021 because he played about maybe 60 games, or pitched about 60 innings, I believe, before going on the IL and then not really showing up too much after that at all. He's locked into the Twins. I mean, he signed that like 5-year deal, which the Twins, again, they thought they had something in Randy Dobnak after the 2020 season. They signed him to the deal that basically buys out his arbitration. And the Twins basically say, hey man, like, we think you're going to be really good, so we'll give you this contract that basically pays out your arbitration, so we don't have to pay you more as you theoretically get better over the years. And in return, we're going to pay you more now and kind of even that out over your arbitration years before he can hit free agency. So Randy Dobnak gets a bigger payday and a for sure payday, and the Twins theoretically get him on the cheap, assuming he got better. And then he was hurt the last 2 years, but he still is under contract until at least 2025. So this year, next year, and the year after, you have Randy Dobnak in your organization, unless he just falls off the cliff. You're going to have to figure out some way to use him. And I think eventually he'll figure out, again, there's a lot of pitchers. It's a long season. He'll probably find his way back eventually. And now here's the big money issue, and this has been blowing up on social media thanks to John Boy clips over the last few days, and that's been the pitch clock. That's a thing now. 15 seconds from when the pitcher gets the ball from the catcher, and it stops once the pitcher starts his delivery. And we've already seen a couple spring training games end because a hitter wasn't in the box and had strike 3 called on him. Heck, we even saw it in college baseball happen over the weekend. And there's a bunch of people, and look, I understand where they're coming from, saying we can't let games end like this. Imagine it's the World Series and it's bases loaded and a team needs it's bases loaded. A team's down by a run. It's the 9th inning, game 7 of the World Series. And the guy gets called out because of an automatic strike call because he wasn't in the batter's box in time. Is that baseball? Is that what we want? You're taking away a big moment. And at the same time, you can reverse that by saying, well, can the guy just get in the box? Why does he need to take so long? 15 seconds seems not like a long time. But when you're actually in the batter's box, 15 seconds is plenty of time. When you're actually on the mound getting ready, 15 seconds is a lot of time between pitches. It's not forever, but that's the point, is it's not supposed to be forever. You're not supposed to take forever. James Karinchak with the Gardos, the Cleveland Guardians, there was a thing where he got called for an automatic ball because he tried to throw the baseball back to the catcher to get a new one. The pitch clock should have reset, and he did not throw the pitch off in time. And that being said, you can see him in the video. He's like tossing the ball up to himself and kind of dinking around a little bit. So the response, I get where a lot of people are coming from, if that's not really baseball and this is kind of dumb and why are we doing this? And then I also can see, and this is kind of where I'm leaning towards on a gut level, of Dude, just get in the box. Just throw the ball. We don't need to be doing this. Karinchak was sitting there dinking around for 8 seconds. He could have easily, even without the pitch clock resetting, got into his windup and threw the ball. That's why they're doing it right away in spring training. There's everybody, and again, this was kind of baseball's reaction, is they're expecting everybody to freak out initially and hope that in 2 weeks everybody kind of figures this out. Now, I don't think it's going to help that the World Baseball Classic doesn't have a pitch clock. So there's going to be a whole bunch of guys that aren't getting used to it. But look, it's going to be a big deal in April. And by the time we get to July, it'll be fine. I think if we get to July and it's still a big issue, if we get through the season and it's still a big issue, then we'll figure it out. But ultimately, the pitch clock is going to make games go by faster. It's going to give them a pace. I was not a pitch clock guy, but then I saw what it did in the minor leagues. And by the way, for everybody freaking out, nobody's talking about how this ruined their games. There's minor leaguers that are coming up through the system unchanged by this pitch clock. There's no guy coming out and saying the pitch clock ruined my season last year. Nobody is saying that. So I think that's where I stand on this whole issue. But I also get where people are coming from, that they're annoyed by it. I'm annoyed that it has to exist too, but I'm more annoyed by the players not just playing the game a little bit faster. I love baseball. I will watch a 4-hour baseball game, but do I want to watch a 4-hour baseball game 162 times plus the postseason? No, that's a long time. Getting it down to 245 like it was in the minor leagues last year on average is very helpful, would be very, very helpful for baseball. So that's the view on the pitch clock. This is going to be a thing. Everybody's going to freak out about it. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be baseball and everybody will adjust. It'll adjust. It's going to seem like a big deal now and everybody's making a big deal about it, but that was kind of the point. So for everybody freaking out about all these rule changes, these are in baseball games that do not matter right now. So when we get to April, and if this is still a relatively big issue, how upset can we be that a guy wasn't in the box in a big time situation? You should be. I mean, it's like in basketball. If there's 5 seconds on the clock and there's a guy sitting in the lane for 4 seconds, it's like, wow, man, that rule really took away. Like, it's the shot clock. Wow, that shot clock went off. It really took away the chance for them to get a last second shot. Did the shot clock take away that chance for them to get a last second shot? Or did they do that by not getting the shot off in time? Play within the rules. And I think I'm not trying to seem like I'm not trying to seem like a guy who says, oh, you don't like the pitch clock? Well, you must be an idiot. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that there is an easy solution to all of this. It's you need to adjust your game. Baseball players and their rhythms I understand it. I do. But some of them are a little overrated. In the words of Michael Scott, I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. And guys are being super duper ooper pooper scooper stitious. And that needs to change a little bit. I don't need to see the guy readjust his crotch 3 times before he gets into the batter's box, or has to undo his gloves and do them again, or have the pitcher have to take signs, shake the guy off 4 times, then call time, then go back in, and then has to make sure he touches this part of his thigh, or has to make sure he does whatever. I just think that some of that needs to go away. Guys, and again, even good pitchers, Jake Odorizzi, Sonny Gray, guys who have pitched well for the Twins, are really slow workers. And it stinks because you want to watch them pitch well and you want to see the good results, but also at the same time, you want to see them have a little bit of a pace to their game. Guys like Louis Varland, who came up last year for the Twins, everybody noticed had quite a pace when he spent the whole season playing in St. Paul, and even getting up to the big leagues where there was no pitch clock. It's already wired into his brain on how to do something, on how to pitch like that, where he wasn't all of a sudden just going to go back and be super slow. Anyway, that's all we have time to talk for today on Bombs Away. I know we have a positional breakdown with our infielders that will be talked about on the next podcast, but there's just a lot to dish on with the early Twins spring training news and notes and how everybody's doing and everybody's progressing and all this kind of stuff. So that's been where the Twins are sitting after the first, I would say, full week of workouts and practices and sessions, and now even with 3 minor league games under their belt as well. We have more Bombs Away coming up, so you don't want to miss it. Check out the Bombs Away YouTube page, the Bombs Away on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner, and this has been Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast.